All right, guys, welcome to Math 0106. This is lesson number 14. We are going over PEMDAS again. So this is another little section. It's interesting. The notes is not actually the formal account of PEMDAS, but we've already talked about PEMDAS and how to approach it. The big thing here that they're including that wasn't included last time are exponents. So when we get there, we'll talk a little bit about exponents a little bit more in depth than we did last time. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's try number 13. So when we're talking about PEMDAS, remember PEMDAS is just an acronym. This is order of operations. I like to think of it as math grammar, but PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So we also want to realize that multiplication and division and addition and subtraction, you can interchange them. When you divide, you are actually multiplying. You're multiplying by what's called the reciprocal. And when you subtract, you're actually adding negative numbers. So you can interchange them. And though, again, in this course, in the material of this course, we do not talk about negative numbers. But in reality, you still can technically do that. Okay. With that being said, let's apply PEMDAS to number 13. So 13 says 2.3 times the quantity 12.1 plus 2.7. So we are told to do parentheses first, so I'm going to go ahead and play with this. This is going to be 12.1 plus 2.7. We're going to add them up, and we get 14.8. So we're left with 2.3 times 14.8, and now we're just going to multiply them. So we're going to do 14.3 times 2.3. Remember, when we multiply, we just want to align. We always put the number that has more digits on top, and then we just multiply. So we are going to do 3 times 3, which is 9. Then we're going to do 4 times 3, which is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Put the 0 down. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. Add them together. We'll get 9, 8, 12. Carry the 1, we'll get 3, 2, 8, 9. Again, we see here we're going to move the decimal place 2 places over, so we'll be at 32.89, and there's our answer. So nothing special. We've seen these sorts of problems. Let's move on to the next one. If we look at the next question, number 14, we have 3.4 minus 1.3 times 0.2. So let's write that out. Again, we have 3, this is number 14, we have 3.4 minus 1.3 times 0.2. The emphasis here is that we want to go ahead and do the parentheses first. So we're going to do 3.4 minus 1.3, which is going to give me 2.1. So we have 2.1 times 0.2. Again, we want to write that out as 2.1 times 0.2. We're just doubling, think of this as doubling 21, which is 42. But because we have the 2 slots, we got to move this over 2. And when you move it over 2, you get to 0.42. 0.42 is our final answer. So again, just stressing here, there's nothing fancy here. We're just following PEMDAS. Okay, and on to the next one. The next one is going to be number 15, which is quantity 5 minus 0.06 divided by 2 plus 3.42 times 0.1. So we're now getting into a bit more of problems. I don't think we've ever seen one that has 5 different numbers, but all we want to do is think about PEMDAS and we'll be fine. So PEMDAS says I want to do parentheses first. So I'm going to do 5 minus 0.06. Now remember, we have to keep things aligned in order to do 5 minus 0.06. So you need to put 2 zeros. When we do the zeros, we're going to be borrowing. So this is 10, this is 9, this is 4. And this is going to give me 4.94. By the way, I did something here, and the only reason why I did it was because I knew what the answer was going to become. You saw me write left to right, but the truth is you should always be going right to left. So notice 10 minus 6 is 4, 9 minus 0 is 9, and 4 minus 0 is 4. I just wrote it that way because I had already solved it in my head and I was just quickly writing it down. So keep that in mind. So we're left with 4.94. Everything else is still the same. And here comes an interesting point. And that point is, so what do I do now? Do I divide or do I multiply? And the correct answer to this is that you can do either. What you can't do is you cannot add. So remember, according to PEMDAS, we have to do parentheses first, then exponents, either multiply, divide, and then add and subtract. So you got to do multiplication, division first before you add and subtract. If you add or subtract, you will miss the question. However, the order doesn't really matter. However, what I find is that sometimes students make silly mistakes here, and there's a subtlety that maybe we'll see in a little bit, and I'll talk more about it if we do. So my advice is, when you're trying to decide whether to multiply or divide first, we read left to right. Go ahead, just read it left to right and do it accordingly. So reading left to right, if I follow my own advice, then I'm going to deal with 4.94 divided by 2 first. So I'm going to do 2 into 4.94. So 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract. We're going to be left with 9. 2 goes into 9 4 times. It's going to give me 8. Gives me 14. So it's going to be 2.47. Now, let me rewrite the rest of it, and then I'll give you my thoughts on this. So if I'm going to think about this in a little bit in a deeper way, I actually can do 4.94. Let me keep it in green. I can do 4.94 divided by 2 pretty quickly in my head. I would cut it up into 4 divided by 2 if I was honestly going to do this. And again, the reason why I'm showing you this, you don't have to do this. If you just want to do long division, it's fine. I'm just showing you the way that I think about this, and if you find it to be easier, use it. I cut it up into 2. I do 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now, 0.94 divided by 2 can get pretty daunting and pretty difficult in your head without writing things down. But I'm going to say this. I know 100 divided by 2 is 50. And I know if I subtract 6 from 100, I get to 94. These two are very easy to divide. And this would give me 47. So really what I do is I say, I go to an easy number to divide by 2, in this case 100, and I just tell myself, well, how much further back? I know I have to go 6 back. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so if 100 divided by 2 is 50, 50 minus 3 is going to give me 47, hence the 0.47. And altogether, it's 2.47. Now, it sounds like I'm doing more, but actually it's a lot less, and the numbers are easy, so it makes my life easy. That's how I like to do it. Again, it's whatever makes you happy, though. There's no such thing as a wrong way. It's nice to see different ways and to think in different ways about similar problems. But choose the one that works best, and let's just keep going. So the next bit, again, is that we want to multiply before we add, following PEMDAS. And when we do this, remember, we're multiplying by 0.1, and 0.1 is 1 over 10. So you're doing 3.42 times 1 over 10. And this is going back to the pizza example that we talked about in the last video. So if you're taking 1/10 of a pizza, then are you getting a bigger slice or a smaller slice? And clearly you're going to be getting a smaller slice. So we're going to move the decimal in such a manner to make the number smaller. And we're going to get 0.342. Because notice if you moved it the other way, you would have been getting 34.2, which is bigger. But that doesn't make sense because you're dividing by 10 or you're multiplying by 1/10. So let's bring down the 2.47 and now we can finish it off. So to finish it off, it's going to be 2.47 plus 0.342. Notice we were missing a 0 here, so we'll just include 1. And then we'll just add 2, 11, carry the 1, 8, and there's my final answer. So, little tedious in terms of the process, but really all you got to do is think PEMDAS and you'll be fine. Let's move on. So, the next one is going to be number 16, 0.07 plus 2.01 divided by 0.1. This one looks a little easier than the others. Okay, cool. All right, so here is number 16. Again, it's 0.07 plus 2.01 divided by 0.1. And here again, you got to follow PEMDAS, which says we need to divide before we add. It's just like the previous example where we multiplied by 0.1, which is the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 10, which means we're going to be making the number smaller. Just take the decimal, move it over 1, and we're now at 0.201, and we're still adding 0.07 to that. So to do that, pretty straightforward. Doesn't matter which one you take first. I always like to put the one that has more digits first. Then I'll line up the other one. It's missing a 0, so I always like to put a 0 to keep it aligned, and then I'm just going to add. So that's 1, that's 7, that's 2. Pretty straightforward, 0.271. And that's it. On to the next problem. Number 17, 5.4 plus 0.32 divided by 0.1 squared. So this is interesting because we're getting something squared. So let's talk about how to attack that. So again, it's 5.4 plus 0.32 divided by 0.1 squared. So again, PEMDAS, the second letter in PEMDAS is E for exponents. So 0.12 squared, squaring means you're multiplying a number by itself. So you're doing 0.1 times 0.1. So keep in mind that what we do is we just multiply, which is 1 times 1 is 1. And because this moves the decimal place over 1, and this moves the decimal place over 1, we need to move 2 from here. So 1, 2. So this is going to be 0.01. If that's not clear, 0.1 times 0.1 is 1. But again, because you have 2 decimal places, we move it 2. So I was explaining it vertically, but the same thing is true. I'm sorry, I was explaining it horizontally, but the same thing is true vertically. In time, you should be able to see that if you don't already see it now. One other way of thinking about it, because you guys know how much I love to explain things in multiple perspectives, converting this into a fraction, this is 1 over 10 times 1 over 10. So if you multiply 1 over 10 times 1 over 10, you get 1 over 100. Remember, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. You get 1 over 100, and we said because there's 2 zeros, we take 1 and we jump 2 times, and we're at 0.01. So there's yet another way of thinking about it. Whatever works for you. So this is now 0.01. Let's go ahead and rewrite everything else. 5.4 plus 0.32. And this is being divided. Okay, so now we're going to say, well, what's the next move? Well, do we add or divide? Well, clearly we divide. So again, there's a lot of different ways of thinking about this. If you recall from the previous video when we talked about division, when you divide by 0.01, it's just a fancy way of saying that you move the decimals to the right. So this should be 32. Okay, but if that's not clear enough, that's okay. Let's look at 0.32 divided by 0.01 in a little more depth. Should I write that down? Yeah. Okay, so again, when we're looking at this, if you're struggling, convert it to a fraction. So this is let me not skip steps here. This is divided by, remember 0.01 is 1 over 100. We just showed that earlier here. So what is division? Well, division is multiplying by the reciprocal. And if you're multiplying 0.32 by 100, right, the number should be getting bigger, which means that we're really just taking the decimal and we're moving it over 2 to get 32. So that's yet another way of thinking about it. And the idea here is don't memorize the process. Think about what the process is, and there's no need to memorize. In any case, to finish this off, all I have to do now is add these together. So we're going to do 32 plus 5.4. And you can see the mistake that I was doing there. I was writing it too fast. We got to keep it aligned. So that means I need to put a 0.0 here. And now I can add them together. So adding it together, what are we going to get? 0 plus 4 is 4. Oh, 0 plus 4 is 4. 2 plus 5 is 7. And then we have the 3. So there's our final answer, 37.4. So hopefully that makes sense. Moving right along. You can see we're doing kind of the same thing over and over again. It's just each time it's getting a little bit more complicated. So, but it's the same process really. Okay, so here we're doing 4.5 minus 3.2 quantity squared plus 7.4 times 0.2. The good thing about this as we work through, hopefully what you're seeing is that we're just taking the skills that we've learned from the previous sections and amplifying the usage of it. Okay, so according to PEMDAS, parentheses comes first. PEMDAS starts with P. So we're going to do 4.5 minus 3.2. This is going to give me 1.3. We're going to square it. And then we're going to add 7.4 times 0.2 to it. Okay, so we did parentheses. Now what's next? Next should be exponents. So we're doing 1.3 squared. Now, I don't know if you remember, but in the very beginning of this course, we did talk about 13 squared, and 13 squared is 169. So this is going to become 1.69. One way you could multiply it out if you wanted to, and you can see that it's 169. But the real reason why I'm writing this is to help illustrate the fact that we moved the decimal place over 2, so we have to move the decimal place over 2. So this is actually 1.69. Everything else is still the same. Also, by the way, if you memorize that 13 squared is 169, then it's not very difficult to memorize that 14 squared is 196, because you just have to switch the 6 and the 9. Also, there is a cool little trick, and this is a little deviation from the course, but let me show it to you anyways. There's a nice little way, we're doing 13 here, to do 13 squared in your head. So what you can do is if you take 13, you can go up or down when you do this, but pick a number that's easy to multiply by that's close to 13. So I don't know about you, but I like to multiply by 10, because that means I add a 0. So I would have to subtract 3 to get to 10. So here I'm going to add 3, and this would get me 16. Okay. Take these two numbers, multiply them together, and then add whatever you go up and down, add that number squared. So let's add 3 squared to it. So this would be 160. 3 squared is 9. Add them together, we get 169. By the way, notice I didn't actually follow PEMDAS here, but because I knew it would still work out to be the same. But I really technically should have done 3 squared first, gotten 9, and then done 16 times 10 and got 160, and then add them together. And that gets you, that's the way to do it. So let's do 14 squared together in our head. So we can drop 14 down by 4 to get to 10, because again, 10 is easy to multiply. Whatever you drop, raise it to. So that's 18. Multiply these two together. That's 180. Add 4, whatever you went up or down to, squared. 4 squared is 16. 180 plus 16 is 196. So cool little trick. If you take the next course in alignment with this, you would see why this is true. I can't show you yet because we have to do something called the difference of squares. But once we learn the difference of squares, I can show you why this always works out correctly. Pretty cool idea. In any case, we're back here. We're going to multiply 7.4 by 0.2. And my question to you is why? Hopefully what you've said is we're following PEMDAS, and PEMDAS says that what you do after, when asked to do whether multiplication or addition, you choose multiplication. So let's do 7.4 times 0.2. We're just doubling, so that's going to be 14.8. Again, because we have to move 2 places, because we have 2 decimals, this is going to become 1.48. So I'm left with 1.48. Everything else is the same. So to finish it off, we're just going to add these together. So 1.69 plus 1.48. Whatever I get here is going to be the conclusion and the answer. So let's do this in blue. So this is 17, carry the 1. 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 1 is 11, carry the 1, and we get 317. And there's our answer. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on. So now we're on 19. 2.1 squared plus 1.2 squared minus 3.5. So again, 19, 2.1 squared plus 1.2 squared minus 3.5. Okay, so let me use my shortcut here. I'm going to take 21. I'm going to drop it to 20. I'm going to raise it to 22. And if you're asking why, because multiplying by 20 is not that hard. So 20 times 22, I just do 22 times 2, which is 44, and tack on a 0. So this is 440. Again, you add 1 squared, so this is 441. So this right here is going to be 441. But remember, if we're not multiplying really by 21, we're multiplying by 2.1 twice. So that means I'd have to move the decimal place over twice. So this would be 4.41. We're going to do the same thing with 12 squared. I think 12 squared is 144, so this would become 1.44 minus 3.5. If what I just did now is confusing, feel free to just do traditional multiplication and you'd get the answer. In fact, I'll just show you real fast. It's the same thing. So this is 1 and 2, 0, 2 and 4. Add them together, you get 441. Because I moved the decimal place over 2, we need to move the decimal place over 2. And with 12, I hope at this point that this is clear, but if it's not, it's okay. This is the why you're in school, is to learn. So it's fine if this isn't clear. Hopefully this is clear. Again, 2 places. So 2 places gives me 1.44. Okay. All right. So now comes the interesting part. What do I do next? Well, the truth is you can handle this in any order, but again, my advice, go left to right. So if you have a choice between addition and subtraction, make your life easier, just go, this is actually designed so that if you go left to right, you don't really face any issues. Okay, so we're going to take 4.41, and we're going to add 1.44 to it. So I'm just doing the first two. First two being that I'm reading left to right. So this is 5, this is 8, this is 5. So I have 5.85 minus 3.5. Okay, so to finish it off, we have 5.85 minus 3.5. Again, I need to tack on a 0. And then we'll subtract. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 8 minus 5 is 3, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 2.35 is my answer. So there we have it. Okay, one more. Number 20, 3.4 minus 1.3 times 0.2. I don't think these are in any particular level of difficulty. I found some of the ones in the beginning to be a little bit harder than the ones at the end. But that's just my opinion. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, the question is, well, what do I do first? So PEMDAS again says you multiply and divide before you add and subtract. So I'm going to take on 1.3 times 0.2. We're going to get 6 and so we're going to get 0.26. Sorry about that. Again, if you're curious where that's coming from, we move the decimal place over 2. So we jump 2 places and we're at 0.26. So we have 3.4 minus 0.26. And this should make sense because if you're doing 1.3 times 0.2, if you're multiplying by a fraction, that means the number should be getting smaller. So let's finish it off. 3.4 minus 0.26. Notice I'm keeping things aligned. I'll tack on the 0 to make my life a little easier, and we'll subtract. So this becomes 10. I got to borrow here from 3. It's going to be 4, 1, and 314, which makes sense, right? You wouldn't borrow from the 3. I know that line's a little close to the 3, but we don't have to. I mean, think about it. If you have $3.40, you spend 26 cents, you still should be in the ballpark around $3, right? So hopefully that makes sense. And that's the end of this section. So hopefully that all of this is okay. It's really just an extension of PEMDAS. I've said PEMDAS so much, hopefully, that your mind is thinking PEMDAS, PEMDAS, PEMDAS. But parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Let me show you it one more time. So again, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. You want to have that down. You want to have that in your head. And these problems won't be so bad. So hopefully that makes sense. If you did struggle, do me a favor. I think the best thing to do is just redo the questions without looking at anything and see if you can do them from scratch. If you can, you're probably going to be okay heading forward. In any case, we'll have one more PEMDAS section in the near future, and look forward to talking to you about PEMDAS there and all the other math content as well. See you guys in the next video. Now, actually, before I go, I wanted to make a little comment. I was editing these videos and watching them over again, and I noticed that here, I actually made a mistake right here. And I hope that you guys caught it in the mistake that I made. And it's funny because of the next video, I actually did it correctly here. So this is interesting. What I forgot to do, I was actually multiplying when I was doing this. And if you multiplied by 0.1, the number would be getting smaller. But if we're dividing, the number actually should be going the opposite direction. So this really should have said 20.1. And then when I add 0.07 to that, I get 20.17. So there was a little mistake there. This just goes to show you, though, that it's important that you go back and you look over your work. It's in the grand scheme of working so many problems out at once, it's very easy to make silly mistakes. So hopefully that doesn't confuse you too much, but there you have it. And now I hope to see you in the next math video.